Hello and welcome to Crushing Doubts Q&A. I'm still figuring out this technology. Instagram is driving me crazy lately. Looks like it is working. Okay, it is finally ready. So I will get the hang of this soon, guys. But welcome to Crushing Doubts Q&A every Thursday at 6 p.m. Eastern, 3 p.m. Pacific. I'm Dr. Dan Ratner, and I'm here as always to talk about mind-body symptoms. And where I like to always start is actually defining them. I know it can seem silly to many of you who are very familiar with this work and very familiar with the Q&A, but it's really important that people who are watching understand that what I'm saying is that not that the symptoms aren't real or that they're in your head, but they start in your head. A lot of what goes on or start from your head and become very real in the body. So these are mind-body symptoms where whatever's going on in your mind translates right into the body. And that's what we're going to talk about. Now, of course, many of you know I've developed my own system that I developed after 8 years of chronic everyday back pain, although I don't usually like the word chronic because I think it's a misnomer. I think it's actually consistently acute where it's always there, but it can be broken at any point. And as I got better, first from discovering Dr. John Sarno's work, and then just really thinking about what was going on in my mind that was working, because once I knew there was a mind-body connection, I knew the key was to get control of the mind. Once I had control of the mind, then I could do a lot of good stuff with what happened in my body. I'll get into that system in a second. I want to say hi to some people. Sophia, just like that, thanks for joining us here. Katherine Toomer, good to see you as well. And Rita is here with us. Thanks for saying hi and for the flower. Beautiful. Good to see you. Dorisa says, hi, Dan and everyone. It is, let me highlight that actually. Dorisa, good to see you here. So I want to talk first, before I talk about my system, about why I do this Q&A. Well, one of the reasons I do this Q&A is that I found that a key component to getting better was having my questions answered. Because if my questions weren't answered, then they rattled around into my mind and I had no way of really feeling confident that I was going to get better. Dr. Sarno said you have to accept the diagnosis to get better. He's totally right about that. But accepting the diagnosis has multiple parts. And included in that is accepting every part of it. And I couldn't accept things until they made sense. That's the way that I work. And that's the way that I found a lot of people work. So my system is designed to make sense of things. And this Q&A is designed to have you ask whatever questions you have, because you're going to carry them around in your head otherwise. And for me to give you answers to your satisfaction. Now, what does that mean? It doesn't mean my answers are necessarily going to be perfect right away, though hopefully they'll be quite good. But what it means is, if I answer a question and it doesn't answer it to your full satisfaction, you got to keep pushing on it. You got to ask the next question, a follow-up question, because whatever you're thinking is what matters. That's going to determine what flows from your mind straight into your body. Now, let's talk a little bit about my system. My system is called the 3-column system. It got its name from when I started working with people after I got better. I would have them take a sheet of paper and divide it into 3 columns because I found that there were 3 main sources of mind-body symptoms. Most of the mind-body world is very on to the idea that emotions can cause symptoms. The emotions column is one of those columns. What I found, though, is that while feelings do play a role in a lot of mind-body symptoms, they tend to play a role mostly in the onset and uptick of them. Those are the signs that there is some kind of unconscious emotion going on. And that's a sign for us to look for that, because if we uncover what it is, we're taking away the symptom function. The symptom function in the emotions column is something that Sarno called distraction. I think he was completely right about that. Essentially, any psychological defense is a distraction. It is a different way of looking at things that keeps us from the truth. And a symptom is a very powerful method of distraction, because who can pay attention to anything else when you're having a really bad symptom? Well, if we take away that symptom function and the distraction isn't needed anymore because we discover what's underneath, the symptom will vanish. But not all symptoms vanish that way. The symptoms that vanish that way are the ones that are the onsets, the upticks, where you had the symptom already, but then it went suddenly way up. So I found that this was one area, but not everything. And it's interesting. A lot of times in the mind-body field, people will talk about it as if this is everything. Just keep looking for those emotions. Just keep journaling. And I don't think those are bad ideas, but they can be misapplied when it's only one of 3 sources. Let me get into the other sources. The doubt column identified another source. This I discovered before the third one, the power column. I'll get into that in a second. But the doubt column I discovered was just coming from my thoughts. You know, I thought to myself, how could I have 8 years of back pain just from a feeling? I don't have the same feeling for 8 years. I highly doubt that. And guess what? I was right. I wasn't having the same feeling for 8 years, other than the fact that I hated the back pain. But I was having a lot of thinking that entire time, just wondering what's happening here? Why is this continuing? Why does the world not understand this? I had so many questions. Well, the doubt column is the basis of this Q&A. I needed to get those questions answered. I got some of them answered from Sarno. Then I sat down with Eric Sherman, a psychologist that he trained, and I got more questions answered there. And then I just kept reading more and thinking more and asking questions until things started to make sense. And what I noticed is when things made sense in my thinking, the symptoms that seemed unable to budge actually started to break up. They started to shift around. So this was the beginning of the doubt column. I came to understand it was the thinking that was cementing things in place. It was the emotions that led to the onset and the uptick, and the thinking that cemented it. So that was 2 columns. For a while, I only had 2 columns, actually. But what I discovered is once I got those 2 really mastered and I didn't feel like I had anything chronic anymore and I could control the acute symptoms more, I started to notice something. And that was that I started to feel more powerful than I had ever felt before in my entire life. And I thought to myself, well, that's very nice. But is it possible that this is not a coincidence, that this comes from something where a part of me in my development wanted me to get to that point? That was the origin of the power column. The power column is about your relationship with you, and it is about whether you're living in alignment with yourself. Symptoms have different functions. In the emotions column, it's to distract. In the doubt column, it is there to protect. We actually don't need the protection, so it's kind of like a helicopter parent. But it comes in to protect us from anything. Uh-oh, you could be hurt. Don't move. Uh-oh, if you do that, it'll get worse. There's all the uh-ohs. That's the doubt column. So that's its function. The power column function, different from distraction and protection, is communication. A part of you wants you to know your story and wants you to align with yourself. And the symptoms aren't going to give up until you fully get there. So the flow of things is actually bring down doubt first. I know I mentioned the emotions column first, but that's just the first one I discovered. The flow of things is bring down doubt, learn about your emotions, and then you can control seemingly chronic and acute symptoms. And then we slide over to the power column and we start doing the work with the self. Each of these columns has different tasks, and I can explain what they are. Many of you know what they are, but even the people who know what they are, know kind of how they function and what they are, need that repetition. So I'm going to say one last thing, and then we're going to get into questions. And the last thing I want to talk about is the resources that are available on my website, which is www.crushingdoubt.org. That's where you can begin to get even more information. Obviously, you can get information from me right here. That's what we're here for. But if you want to get really comprehensive information, on my website, I have my teaching seminars. These are 8 sessions. They're 12 hours total that tell you everything about the mind-body world, the mind-body field, every aspect of what to understand. Because why? We're trying to bring down doubt. We're trying to have it all make sense. These seminars are available there. They're pre-recorded. You can get them in the middle of the night if you want to have something to start to work on. But they're going to give you a handle on the big picture and actually the details, because I talk all about my columns. You can learn about it there. Then if you need support, you can also sign up for my membership groups also on that website. If you have any questions about these, email me, dan@crushingdoubt.org. Okay, enough of a preamble, but there's a lot to cover just to orient people to what's going on. Let's jump in with a couple of questions. Maisel1213 or Maisel, thank you for joining us here. Please do let me know if you have any questions. And that's true for everybody. Anyone who's coming in the middle, don't hesitate to ask your questions. There are literally no stupid questions. I never understand why anyone would make somebody feel stupid for asking a question, because if you have the question, it's there, like it or not, and it deserves a good answer. Okay, Lynn Slavensky, good to see you here. Lynn says, thank you, Dan. My foot is much better. That is awesome. I have been dismissing the arch pain, normalizing symptoms. Is attention deficit disorder mind-body? Okay, so 2 separate parts to this. First, I want to talk about what's going on with her and observe that. So, Lynn, this is for the rest of the group first, then I'll answer your question. You were having some foot issues. That's not your main issue, but this was an onset or an uptick. So we said, okay, now wait a minute. It seems like there's something emotional going on because this is emotions column. But the main work that we had to do with you was just to bring down doubt first. When doubt is there, as I often say, you've got to deal with the doubt first. So Lynn and I dealt with the doubt. A lot of times when you deal with the doubt, you don't even need to discover the emotion. As long as you can hold up a wall against doubt and be clear I'm not worried about this. This is doubt. It's often just going to go away because emotions pass. Now, if you need to discover the emotions, you can, and there's information there. But the main task that you're going to get involved with mind body work and columns work is to keep a wall up against doubt. There's a reason it's called crushing doubt. It is the number one defense against symptoms running away with things. If we just hold up a wall against doubt, not going to last. That is what happened for Lynn. That's great. And I see that you normalize the symptoms. Now, her question is attention deficit disorder mind body. So I get lots of questions, and sometimes I get them multiple times, which is very useful actually, because it makes me think about it in greater detail, greater nuance, and usually that's very helpful. Let me say a hi to a couple people, by the way, before I answer this. Debbie Grubbs, good to see you here. Gomez Vibes, good to see you here as well. And Carrie Nordling has joined us. Great to see you all, and please do let me know if you have any questions. So this is a question that I've gotten many times. Is attention deficit disorder mind body? I also want to say people can be sensitive, and I understand why, about their diagnoses. Sometimes, and this is interesting, sometimes people hate their diagnoses. They feel like they're a torture to them. They make them worry. Other times people feel like the diagnosis makes sense of something, and so they don't want that disturbed. What I've found with attention deficit disorder is that a lot of people find that it is relieving to get that diagnosis because it often is describing something they're experiencing. So I do want to say this before I say anything about whether it's mind body. It is a very real experience that has consistency to it. And so people who are saying, oh, that finally makes sense of things, I'm 100% on board with that. It is describing something. However, it also can be symptom related. Now, how much is it symptom related? That actually is one of the areas that I'm still in progress studying. I have a 40 to 50 year plan to study all of these things and talk about it all. And it's not totally clear to me to what degree it is actually a condition that is really there, or a personality type, or a symptom, or some combination. What I do know, though, is mind body symptoms are so prevalent that at least some of it is going to be symptom related. Now, whenever I hear the term disorder or syndrome or anything like that, generally speaking, I tend to throw those out. It doesn't mean I don't think there's any disorders or syndromes, but those are purely medical. And most of the time, a disorder or a syndrome makes us think there's something wrong. These things are part of the human condition. So attention deficit disorder, I would say attention deficit symptoms are part of the human condition. They are part of an experience that some people have more than others as well. So there may be a type of brain or a type of person or a type of functioning of the brain that is going on there. But the symptoms of it are definitely as mind body driven as any other experience. Even depression or anxiety, it's all mind body driven. One thing that I find fascinating and very freeing is if we pay attention to what is the mind doing to the body and to our overall psychological experience, we can learn a lot about it. So, short answer, long, Lynn. I would say that attention deficit disorder is it's a complicated thing that is describing something real, and it's unclear exactly where all of it comes from. But does some of it come from mind body symptoms? 100%. That I have no doubt about. Then again, doesn't matter what I think. So I want to hear your comments and I want to hear follow-up questions. Okay. Good question, Lynn. Thank you. It is Layla has joined us here as well. Good to see you here, Layla. And the real Jameha has joined us as well. Good to see you. All right. Now we have a question coming in from Karen Isaacs. Good to see you here. I had a long talk with my husband about, quote, being fiercely in my own corner. He really got it. I love that saying you share. It's empowering. Okay, thank you for reflecting that, Karen, but also thank you for bringing the topic to us, because one of the things that I love about this Q&A is when we talk about these things, we get to talk about them all together, and we get to think about what does this all mean. So I want to orient everybody to what Karen and I are talking about. Now, Karen is in the group, and so this is something that we especially talked about there, though, Karen, we did talk about it at this Q&A in terms of power column work. The phrase being fiercely in your own corner is one that I coined. I have lots of these phrases because they're the way that I taught myself to think in ways that helped. But it is a power column thought. It's a power column action step. Action steps are new ways of thinking that are going to seize control of the mind and direct it where we want it to go, so we direct things in a way that change things in the body. So the idea of being fiercely in your own corner is in the power column, we're working on relationship with self. And so much of the time, and I really want to encourage you all to think about this, so much of the time we think we're in our own corner because who wouldn't be? Of course I care about myself. Of course I want things to go well for me. But the key word in being fiercely in your own corner, and I know Karen gets this because she's been applying it, is the word fiercely. Because we're all in our own corner to some degree. We all want pretty good things for ourselves, mostly. Even if we hate ourselves or really find ourselves frustrating or don't like ourselves in some way, generally speaking, we're wishing it would get better. We are in our own corner. Almost everybody is in some capacity. But are we fiercely there? No. What does that mean? Being fiercely in your own corner means I'm going to align with me no matter what anyone else is saying. It is about developing a relationship with yourself that is separate from everyone else. And meanwhile, you hear the word fiercely. It means you're going to defend that territory fiercely. It doesn't always mean you're going to fight with somebody else outside of your mind, but inside your mind. Sometimes it does, but inside your mind at the very least, there's got to be a lot of focus on what do I need and how do I make sure that I'm going to get that and go after it. Now, Karen's saying I had to talk with her. She had to talk with her husband about it, and he really got it. So I think one of the other pieces that is very useful about it is it does communicate something to other people that they can understand. Oh, now I get it. You weren't fiercely in your own corner, because some people are. They already were. But for a lot of us, we were not, especially people who experienced trauma and a lot of difficult emotional experiences. More often than not, we were taught to question our own reality. Very hard to be fiercely in your own corner if you're questioning your own reality. So this phrase is one of those action steps, which are things I call to mind to help myself at a given moment. This happens all the time. I bring it in. I'll be having a conversation on the phone and say, this isn't feeling very good. I need to be more fiercely in my own corner. What do I need to do then? I need to say, hey, I'm not loving this. That's something that maybe I wouldn't have said before. But now that I'm fiercely in my own corner, yeah, I'm going to do it. Now, being fiercely in your own corner, I'm going to say one more thing about it. It also means being fiercely in your own corner with yourself, not just with other people, because many times we are attacking ourselves without even realizing it. And so this phrase that I can call to mind, like all of my action steps, they're phrases I can call to mind that help me in a moment like that and say, wait a minute, why am I attacking myself? That's not fiercely in my own corner. Let me get right back to it. So it's a way of resetting the brain, these action steps. Now, I have many of these action steps. I have something called Action Steps PDF or a mind body guide. These mind body guides, by the way, there's 4 of them. They're available on my website as well, www.crushingdoubt.org. But the Action Steps PDF, it's basically, I think there's I've lost track of how many. There were, I think, 150 ideas or something. And these are the main things that I say to myself at a given moment. I'll give you a couple of other examples. If I'm trying to move and I'm having a mind-body issue, but I'm worried about it, I remind myself, it can hurt, but it cannot harm. That's a phrase I call to mind right then. Or if I'm having doubts that I'm going to get better and I'm working on something for a long time, I remind myself, the thing that matters is that I stay in the same strong place against doubt for the largest percentage of the time. Now, that helps me if I get worried that maybe I've slipped out of fighting doubt for a given moment. What that statement reminds me of is that's okay. You don't have to be perfect. It's about the percentage. And that idea brings down my doubt. Here's an emotions column action step. Sometimes I'll think, I'm pretty sure I'm on to the right thing, but the symptom's not coming down. And I know this is an emotions column symptom because it was a sudden onset or a sudden uptick. And I remind myself, sometimes you got to get more specific in the emotions column. There's an action step that I'm bringing in to remind myself what to think there, and it gets better. So back to being fiercely in my own corner. Karen, I'm just so glad that you're finding it so empowering. What that means also, the fact that it is feeling that empowering, is that you are getting it. And the fact that your husband got it also speaks to the fact that you're getting it. Because other people aren't going to get it unless you do. If you are communicating it and you've gotten it, many more people are going to get it. So Karen, this is all a sign that you have gotten the hang of that power column work. It's been a while now. You really have gotten the hang of it, but it's kicking into high gear. You're really getting there. So keep up the good work. Okay, this is not often these days that we can actually fit in a preloaded question. Let me just say that for people just in general, if you can't be here or you want to make sure to get a question in here, you can always send it to me by email. It's dan@crushingdoubt.org. And I'm going to load in a question here that was asked. Actually, it was asked a while ago. But we don't usually get to preloaded questions. But here we have one. Okay, this is from Caroline, who at the time I think was watching some of my podcast videos. By the way, new podcast episodes should be coming out in the next probably 2 months. I'm finishing up the book and I'm really close now. I know I keep saying that, but it's actually true. So Caroline says, I'm loving these videos. Thank you. You are welcome, Caroline. I believe my symptoms are TMS 100%. Now, TMS is tension myositis syndrome or tension myoneural syndrome, which Sarno changed it to later. That is Sarno's description of the mind-body terminology. I don't care which terms we use. I care that all of these terms basically mean the same thing. They mean that the mind controls the body. And so any term we use, we have to make sure we see how they all actually fit together. I can talk more about that if people want to hear more about it. Okay, Caroline says, the issue I struggle with is the crazy world we now live in where up is down and down is up. I'm a deep thinker and I feel the craziness of the world contributes to rocking my equilibrium, and then I'm sure contributes to stress at times. How do I combat this very external thing, which is so evident in the world we live? Now I'm going to take this down because the comment is a little big, so it's covering too much of me. But the basic idea that Caroline's saying here is the world can be a very stressful place. Now that can be true in multiple ways. But what Caroline is highlighting here in what she's saying, I think, if I'm interpreting it correctly, Caroline, is essentially we're always everybody's thinking different things and we seem to almost be speaking a different language, like there is no central truth. And this is a very important part of the process that I talk about with respect to doubt. I mentioned this in my book very strongly, which is that we have to have objective truth. We can't make sense of anything if there's no objective truth. What do I mean by that? Objective truth means my truth is your truth. The sky is blue for me and the sky is blue for you. And we have to have some sense of the truth of that, because otherwise people are just arguing whatever, and you can't rely on anything. And I think there is a lot of that. There's a lot of that in media. There's a lot of that in the opinions people have. The disagreements we have become more and more wide in terms of the gulf between us in any number of areas. And I don't care what side you're on. I actually care more about the gulf. Why is that gulf happening? It is happening in part because we don't have objective truth set. Well, one of the reasons I love doing what I do is that it is designed to use science and logic to make sure there is an objective truth about this particular topic. But if we applied that to everything, we'd be much better off. I would rather be open to all kinds of ideas, including my being wrong, as long as you and I and all of us together are exploring truths and trying to figure out what's actually true here and being able to settle on things. We don't have to settle on it right away, but we've got to be able to sync up about things. So Caroline's question, how do I combat this very external thing, which is so evident in the world we live? Well, there's lots of ways to do it, but I'm going to give you one way to do it, Caroline. And this is for Caroline, but anytime I'm answering a question, it's also answering the question for all of you, because the whole idea is for things to make more sense. So one of the things is this: the power column is a place where you can live with you. The external world, almost no matter what's happening, unless it's really extreme, isn't going to have as much of an effect on you in every way. Does it have effects on you? Sure, of course. But can it touch your relationship with you? Can it get you out of alignment with yourself? It could temporarily knock you out of alignment with yourself, but you have a chance to live a life that's in alignment with yourself. So here's another action step of the power column that I like to use. It's something I call the power of aloneness. And that is, usually people think aloneness is bad, or they think lonely. But the power of aloneness is about recognizing no one else gets to decide what you think. Doesn't matter whether people are saying up is down or down is up. Down is down, and up is up. And if you can stay true to yourself and connected to that, then you can stay connected to reality. And this is a very big part for trauma sufferers, to be able to believe in your own reality, to believe in your own strength and powers. This is another area where the columns are incredibly important, I find, because they give you a system to hold on to reality. It always makes sense. It always follows it. Onsets and upticks, they are always emotional, unless there's one exception, which is if there is a physical event that scared you or made you worried you were hurt. That's called a trigger. But guess what? It scared you. Hear that word. Scared is an emotional word. It's still an emotional onset. So the rules do apply. One thing that I just want to keep getting across to all of you is how these columns have set rules that always make sense. When a symptom will not budge at all, there is doubt there 100% of the time. When it's kind of a low plateau, when you've gotten rid of doubt and you've got your emotions largely figured out, but it's hanging around there, that's usually a power column sign. That's a plateau in recovery. And that is about your relationship with you and the symptom trying to communicate something. So these rules, they all tell us ways that we can live with ourself. And Caroline, that can free us from the world's environment. We can step outside of that. Now, not in all ways, it still is affecting us, but it can't invade us. It can't invade our souls. It can't invade our relationship with ourselves. So that is my long answer to that question, but hopefully it's helpful. Caroline, let me know. Please do follow up as needed. Okay. Thank you so much. Oops, I already put that up there. Okay, it is Layla says, is anxiety itself a symptom or the cause for symptoms? That's a great question too. So I'd say this. First of all, anxiety is largely a symptom more than a cause, but symptoms also can cause other symptoms. I'll give you an example. Sometimes when I get a headache, I then kicks up my worry about, because sometimes headaches can lead to stomach kind of issues, and I get very worried about that sort of thing. So one symptom can lead to another. So your question is a great one for multiple reasons, but one of them, Layla, is that it can be both a symptom and a cause. However, I want to put the emphasis on it being a symptom because really it's a chain of symptoms, even when it leads to another. The original cause is something going on in that mind-body experience that has meaning. One thing that I say, speaking of objective truth and that question Caroline asked, one way that we can get to the science and logic of things is we must make only one assumption. I don't like assumptions because they make us, well, assume things. They make us take on a truth that we don't know for sure. But there is one truth that I feel comfortable taking on, and that is you make sense and your symptoms make sense. If we are going to entertain the notion that nothing makes sense, then we're in real trouble. And I understand some people can go there. I do not go there at all. And one of the reasons is when I had all this back pain, it didn't make any sense to me. But guess what? I actually figured it out. It all did make sense, the whole thing. And that was magical to me. It taught me that this universe that, even though the recovery wasn't magic, though it did feel like a miracle, the magical nature of the universe is more that it does make sense. We just have to figure out how. So if we can make that one assumption, you make sense and your symptoms make sense, then we can figure out what's going on. Then that makes everything a symptom. It's a symptom of something's not making sense, or I'm worried about something. And the columns sum up where these symptoms come from. Does it come from an emotion? Does it come from a doubt? Or does it come from a power column issue? And here's another piece of good news. There's only 3 columns. And these columns cover everything you need to know. I searched and searched and searched and asked myself, do these actually cover everything? Is there a 4th column? And I kept looking for things. And I was like, it seems like it just has come together very well, where the things that I looked at all fit into these bigger issues, these bigger column structures. So anxiety is a symptom, and I would want to figure out if there was an onset of it, what was the emotion of the moment? If the anxiety is coming from a doubt, I'd want to figure out what the doubt is. If the anxiety is coming because I got knocked out of power, I'd want to look in power. So each symptom can be interpreted and understood, and that is part of what the columns are for. Layla, let's do a follow-up on that just to make sure that I covered what you needed in that question. Because as I often say, it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter if it makes sense to me. It matters if it makes sense to you. And that's not just for Layla, it's for everybody here. So if my answer answered your question enough, great. If it didn't, I want you all to follow up. You don't have to just follow up on your own questions. You could say, hey, I liked Layla's question. I liked part of your answer, but I'm not quite sure. Okay. It is Layla says, yes, makes complete sense. Excellent. The main thing to remember, Layla, is once we make sense of all of these things, we gain control. And the columns give us that control. They allow us to know, all right, I can locate what column I'm working in. I can locate what problem there is. And I have tasks within those columns and solutions. And it's not even that complicated. There's not that much that needs to be done. And you, I think, know this because you're experiencing some of that. Layla then said, my question would be if you've had anxiety since childhood and can't pinpoint where exactly it comes from. So what I would say, Layla, is I think we are going to be able to pinpoint where that comes from. And I know that that could surprise some people because sometimes people come to see me and they say, well, but I've been to like 10 years of therapy or 15 years of therapy or 5 years of therapy, whatever it is, they would expect they would have come to this. But what I've found is another strength of the columns is that they interpret things so differently that you get new information. So if we look at a columns lens, they're going to teach us so much about what's going on. And my body has been my absolute best teacher. So your symptoms are going to teach us things that virtually no therapist will have picked up on, certainly no doctors and people in your life. We have a chance to understand you in a way that has never been the way you've understood yourself before. And a huge part of that is right the step we're on, Layla. We've brought down doubt enough. I know there's still doubt there. Everybody has it. Doubt always comes back in. But if we keep working against it, we bring it down low enough and we start to understand, we start to get to look at the emotional world more. The emotions column and the power column are both emotional columns, but they are different. The emotions column is simply about awareness of these emotions. Bringing them into your awareness takes away the distraction function and takes away the symptom. But in the power column, it's about what do we do about this emotional awareness? Not only that, but it's also about understanding the emotions more broadly. The emotions column is about understanding and awareness of emotions that are happening right there. And they're more circumspect. They're more, not small issues exactly, but they're specific issues. The power column is about your whole broad experience, about understanding it more. And your question right here, you know, if you've had anxiety since childhood and can't pinpoint it, the power column is where we're going to pinpoint that. The emotions column can give us clues about it, though. And it is all going to fit together towards what does this all mean? I want to encourage you to give it just a little bit of time, but let's work. Actually, this is important. When I say give it time, I don't mean what most people mean by that, because most people say that about virtually any treatment. Well, just give it time. I'm not just saying give it time. I'm saying, okay, give it time, but during that time, we're going to do the work. There's specific work to be done. So it's not about, oh, just give it time and hope that it'll work. There are steps and things we're going to do. So, Layla, I'm going to help you uncover that. And then you will know. And that is going to change things a lot because otherwise you'd be left thinking, well, maybe I'm just an anxious person. I have found that although people have certain traits that they can carry with them and continue, I'm still somewhat anxious in certain ways. I'm a lot less anxious than I used to be because I now understand what I've been through. Even I didn't understand it for 40 years, and I had been through it. Okay, Layla, it sounds like I got that. Yeah, she says, yes, exactly. Okay, so we're going to do it. And I'm right here with you. We've got the steps. I'll keep explaining them to you, okay? Keep up the good work. Scotty Styles says, yes, 100% fear and a perception of danger is enough to create a symptom. It's a very important thing. Thanks for observing that, Scotty. My pleasure, Layla. Scotty, thank you for observing that again and validating what I'm saying. It is a really important part of the experience in the mind-body world that can help us make sense of things, but also get people relief. Because if we're thinking that everything is emotional, that's doing something that I call beating your head against the emotional brick wall. Just keep looking for the emotion. But what if that's not the cause? When it often isn't. In fact, the percentage of the time that emotions are causing, I don't know what the exact percentages would be, is, you know, every human being has mind-body experience. How would I quantify that? But I will say I have a lot of experience with it in myself. I have a lot of experience in working with other people. And doubt drives many more symptoms than emotions do. Power also drives a lot of symptoms. But the primary source of symptoms is doubt. We are thinkers. Human beings think a lot. We're observant. We're self-aware. So whatever symptoms we're having, we're also thinking about them. Doubt drives so much of it. Thanks for highlighting that, Scotty. All right. Jamie, good to see you here. Jamie says, "Hi, Dan. Thank you so much for all your support. I appreciate you." My pleasure, Jamie. I'm here anytime. And I think, I try to give people what I wish I had had. There's so many times where I just was like, I wish I could talk to somebody about this. I wish I could get support right now. I wish there were systems in place for this. I wish there was a Q&A. So I built it. And it's not only very gratifying, but it's working very well. It's good to see. Okay, Jamie then says, thanks to you, Dan. Uptick happens, but they don't. Oh, thanks to you, Dan. Upticks happen, but they don't last. What you have taught me works. Still a lot of work to do, but I've seen gains. That is fantastic, Jamie. I know you had an uptick in a symptom today, and Jamie said this thing to me. I hope you don't mind me sharing this, Jamie, but it's very small. It's not detailed. She kind of asked, how can I understand this symptom? And what I reflected back to her was, you actually already do understand this symptom, but she's having a power column symptom. So it wasn't about understanding it. It actually was about the fact that she did understand it meant that she was going to have to make some adjustments. And that can get really uncomfortable in the power column, especially when it's with big people in your life. But Jamie, we can do that. We're going to figure it out together. And the fact that you now know this is just a mind body symptom, I don't need to worry that this dizziness is about something physical. You got rid of what I call level 1 doubt. You know it is mind body. You're not worried about that anymore. And you genuinely were when you first came to see me. So this is part of how it works. We look at it enough to see the details and bring down doubt and recognize, no, this is not a purely physical symptom. It is a physicalized symptom from a mind body one. And that's great. And now we're working in power. So again, the flow of things, bring down the doubt, learn to understand and recognize the emotions, and then everything flows towards power. Well, Jamie's in that power column. We're starting to recognize her big picture emotional experience, and we're starting to figure out, what does she need to do about it? As scary as it might be, I say, stage an internal rebellion. This is being fiercely in your own corner so that you can go live a life that is in alignment with you. You're getting very close to that, Jamie. And in fact, you already come a very long way. You're doing much better than you were before, not only with the symptoms and not only with not getting scared about them or having these symptoms not last, but also with living a more powerful life. You're way along the way on that. And let's keep at it. Okay? Keep it up. Thanks, Jamie. And thank you for the kind words. Rev Dubois, thank you for joining us here. Please do let me know if you have any questions. We're talking about mind-body issues and my system about how to get you relief from them. All right, back to Karen Isaacs. I've addressed my limp for a while. Since I have no pain, I don't really deal with it, but why not? I think my walking is better. Had hip pain, had hip replacement 12 years ago, but I'm told I still limp. And it's embarrassing, especially because I thought my walking was so much better. Okay, a couple things I want to say, Karen. First of all, your walking probably is a lot better, because lack of worry frees people up and it makes it a lot less scary to do these things. But okay. Rev Dubois says, "Hi, Dan. It's Mike Webster. Good to see you, Mike." So Mike has done some of the work in terms of his own mind-body experience, but also trained with me. He's a training therapist and he understands the columns because I've trained him in them. So good to see you here, Mike. We're also fellow music fans. We just connected on that. That's very exciting. So back to you, Karen. I love what you said here. There's a couple things I love what you said, but I'm going to say particularly this one. I don't really deal with it, but why not? This is part of what happens with power. We start to say to ourselves, you know what? Why am I putting up with that? Why? I used to have all kinds of things that I would put up with, even things like good friends who I genuinely liked, but maybe they were kind of difficult. And I thought to myself, wait, why am I doing that? Let me have a conversation with them and see if we can adjust this. And in some cases we couldn't, and it was just not aligning with myself. And I had to part ways, and that was sad and I hated it. But I love this expression. Why not? Why can't I have better? Just by asking that question, we're opening the door to something. So, Karen, this is something that could be a new frontier for you. In the doubt column, one of the things that I encourage people is challenge the beliefs that you have, because if we challenge them, we can get to new realities. We can find new solutions. I think what you're saying here, if I have it right, is what if That limp is also a mind-body symptom. What if I can address it? Or even what if I can get it better? I think we can probably get it all better, but we can certainly get it somewhat better because mind-body symptoms are so extensive, they're just everywhere. We can definitely get this better. So you're not loving having it. You're saying it's embarrassing, and I don't think you have anything to feel embarrassed about, and I want to protect you from that feeling. But I also want to give you plenty of hope that we can do things about this. Almost everything in my life is a symptom. I like to think of my whole body as just a giant brain. And I think of my body as a flowing emotion. That's for the emotions column. But it's also a flowing thought process. It's just a flowing brain. And so, Karen, let's look at that. Okay. I love that idea. Great job. Okay. Jane says, hi, Jane. Good to see you. Hi, Dr. Dan. Couldn't get online in the car. Have had a terrible week. I'm so sorry and feel so down about it. I doubt I will ever get substantially better. Arg. So, first of all, Jane, you're hitting the key word. I'm sure this will not surprise you, but the key word is doubt. Doubt is very, very crafty, and it can sneak in there in any variety of ways. Here's what I want to encourage you about, Jane. Remember, you make sense and your symptoms make sense. So does your doubt. So does your doubt, meaning when it emerges. Why is it now? That's what I want to find out. This is not an accident. I'm sorry you've had a terrible week, but there's a reason that your doubt has climbed in right now. And it could be for multiple reasons. I'll give you some of them as an example, but I want you looking for it. You must never buy into doubt. It is lying every time. So it's telling you there's no hope right now. It's lying. It's managing to win some battles. It is fooling you. It's not going to win. I'm not going to let it win. You're not going to let it win. At the very least, I'm not going to let it win. So you keep coming back here. I'm going to keep pushing against it. But I want you fighting that also. Don't buy into it. It's got you pinned down right now. It's always a temporary victory. Doubt loses against longevity. You keep going, it can't keep it up. Why can't it keep it up? Because it's full of shit. A liar can't keep up a lie. They will eventually get caught. That's what's going to happen with this doubt. So here's the place to look, Jane, is to think about why. Why is the doubt here? So let me give you some reasons it could happen. Doubt could happen because you tried to take a step forward and maybe you weren't ready to take that action. Like Sarno says, resume normal physical activity. But sometimes you do that and you weren't ready and it triggers something. Or sometimes you are about to step into power and doubt says, we've got to protect you. By the way, I want to say hi to Bex B. If you have questions, please do let me know. We're talking about mind-body symptoms here and my system to resolve them. Thank you for joining us. We got a little bit of time left. So, but I am here every Thursday, 6 p.m. Eastern and 3 p.m. Pacific. So power and doubt protecting us. That's another reason it can happen. It could happen from something someone said where, they got our doubt going. Maybe you went to see a doctor and they were like, and they said some silly thing. They're doing that all the time. I love doctors for certain things. They're incredibly helpful for protecting us from life-threatening things and acute things. But they are not so good, especially not in the last number of decades, with things that seem to be chronic. They're not figuring it out. So that could set you over. What I want us to do, Jane, is to figure out why. Okay, now you did have a comment, and I want to follow up on that. Jane said, I felt so bad so many days in a row, and I couldn't make sense of it. Okay. One of the keys in the column is always go to the beginning. Go to the timing. When did it start? The fact that it's been many days in a row, that doesn't matter as much as the fact of when did it start? Because, I can tell you, I've been in a funk of my own a little bit. Not too bad, but bad enough that it was noticeable. And I started to pay attention to when did it start? And it started with a particular thing. I'll probably share the particulars next week if people want to know about it. It was something related to my music, but just somebody that I wasn't so happy with and the way the interaction was going. And it set off a whole cascade of events. So, Jane, I don't know what it is yet, but I know it makes sense. And I know we've got to go back to the source. When did it start? What was the thing that set you off? Because I have a strong suspicion that this is what I call activated trauma. It's something that reminded you of bad things from the past and just made you feel extremely pessimistic all over again. And then doubt was like, hooray, it's a doubt party. Let's jump in there. I guarantee you that's what happened. We're going to find the source. Meanwhile, if you can't wait till next week, email me, dan@crushingdoubt.org, and we're going to talk about it. Okay? All right. Karen said, great work, Jamie. I totally agree with you. And Jamie thanked her. What a great community we have. Okay, Aaron, good to see you here. Aaron was my college roommate, and he's one of my very best friends. But he also is a psychiatrist and understands the mind-body field. So we're connecting on lots of things. And then he said, well, that is true about doctors. And he himself is a doctor. So all the more credibility for Aaron to say that. So thanks for chiming in on there, Aaron, and very good to see you as always. Okay, then Dorisa said, Jane, we are with you. Thank you, Dan. You provide great insights. Thank you for the kind words, Dorisa. And I certainly hope that I do. You know, you guys are here for a reason. You need to get information. You need to get good information and good answers. So I'm always trying to provide insights about what's happening and how to orient yourself. That's what the columns are about. How can we understand this moment and what do we do about it? Okay, Jane said, thanks, Teresa. I really appreciate it. It means a lot to me. We're all here with you, Jane. We really are. And we're going to figure this out. Do not give in to doubt. Okay. One last question for tonight. Catherine Toomer, I see that you have a question on Instagram. By the way, I do want to say, if I ever miss a question, circle back. I never mean to, because I know how bad it would feel to have your question skipped. Not being seen is a big part of trauma and mind-body symptoms being activated. I never want to enact that. I'm not perfect, so it could happen accidentally, but I never mean it. So circle back and ask if I did not answer your question. Okay, Catherine says, hi, Dr. Dan. Maybe I need advice about how to build a wall against doubt. Which, by the way, when I say that, I mean just keep doing the doubt work. That's all I mean. It doesn't have to be this impenetrable wall. It just is the continuous work. Okay, then she says, I do it, but my wall is very porous, a lot of things getting through it. And therefore, I do a lot of fighting with myself. And that seems to immediately lower my self-esteem. I'm not in doubt that my intrusive thoughts are mind-body. Nevertheless, I still have great trouble not listening to them or acting on them. Okay, so I want to highlight something for the whole group, and then, Catherine, I'll get back to answering you specifically. Catherine's talking about something that I call level 3 doubt. There are 3 levels of doubt. Level 1 doubt is this mind-body or not? Or do I have something that's purely physical? She's past that. Level 2 doubt is my symptom harder to conquer than others? You're mostly past that, Catherine. I think with OCD, though, you did have some level 2 doubt. We've started to crank that out too. But level 3 doubt, and that's where we're working right now, is can I do it? Is there something wrong with me? Now, you're describing your system for fighting doubt or your wall as being very porous, but actually, I bet you what's happening, Catherine, is not so much that you have a porous wall, but more so that doubt is just really tricky. Interestingly, you're attributing the problem to you. I want to attribute the problem to doubt. Doubt is a pain in the ass, sometimes literally, and it wants to fight its way in all the time. But isn't it interesting? You're blaming you. Now, at the same time, you may also be observing something in yourself that your confidence isn't quite as high as we want it to be. And then that brings down your power. Well, we can do work in the power column to build you up there. So simultaneously, I want you to recognize a lot of the problem here is doubt, not you. And then secondarily, if we can get you to trust you, I shouldn't say secondarily because they're both really important, but if we can get you to trust you and your reality and trust that you're going to be able to do this, you're going to feel a lot stronger against doubt. I often say this, in terms of what can help. But when people come to groups, one of the reasons they're very helpful is we can get farther in one sitting. So, Catherine, we just talked about something here. But if we were in group together, as you know, because you've done it, I could ask you questions. You could ask me questions. We could get even further in this discussion because this is this idea that, you're not having full confidence in you, full trust in you. That goes somewhere. There would be a next, follow-up to that. In the Q&A, which the Q&A is great, but then you've got to type out a question and I got to, get it in the queue and then I got to answer it. And hopefully I'm answering, in a way that works for you. In the group, we just get further because I can see what's going on. We're really having that live interaction. Okay. So if you're interested in that and you have questions about it, it's dan@crushingdoubt.org, or you can sign up for it, www.crushingdoubt.org. But Catherine, we're on to something. We want to get you more fully in power in a more permanent way, where you can just feel like, I trust me. Because guess what? I don't mean this to sound bad or arrogant. I mean it to be encouraging to you all. I actually trust me more than any human being on earth. And I don't mean that arrogantly. I mean it to say, isn't it great that I finally trust me? I'm not worried about my goodness. I'm not worried about my motivations. And it's not because I haven't looked at it, because I've actually looked extensively at it. It's that I've finally come to peace for the most part. We all have our moments, but for the most part, I've come to peace with myself that I am somebody that I can trust. I don't need to doubt my own reality. When we get you there, Katherine, and you're a long way along the way for that than you were, but when we get you there more fully, this is all going to resolve itself. You're making good progress, but let's keep it up, okay? Rudemaster27, good to see you here. Thanks for saying hi. Okay, Jane Smith says, thanks, Dr. Dan. Very good to see you. I feel such a loss of confidence and hope, but I'll try to go back to the day and see if I can figure it out. Okay, remember also, you're not alone. You don't have to figure it out yourself. Make some notes about what it is, and I'll help you figure out what that was. I'm very good at locating these things. You're not alone, but doubt has got you fooled. It has you thinking you've lost all confidence and hope. It's complete garbage. I'm going to describe it to you. In a couple of weeks, at the very least, probably even sooner, you're going to be feeling significantly better. You might even feel better this week just from knowing what you're knowing, because you've got a task. You know exactly where to go. Now, we'll see how it goes, but you keep me posted, okay? I am going to take one more comment because Mary A. has joined us here for the first time, I believe. Hi, Mary. Mary says, hi, Dan. I previously recovered from chronic palpitations and dizziness last year, after which I started experiencing a chronic stuffy nose. How can I assure myself that this is TMS or mind-body issue? And then she said, I got my nose and sinuses checked out with a CT scan and x-ray, and it was clear. However, I'm still experiencing doubt. Okay, so I'm going to give you my first answer, Mary, but I always want you to follow up, and we're probably not going to have a ton of time to follow up today, but you can send me an email, dan@crushingdoubt.org, or you can come back next week on Thursday, and we can discuss it more. You can also get my seminars or come to group, whatever you want to do, but I got to get you answers. So I'm going to give you my first answer, but let's consider this an ongoing discussion, I hope. So when you say, how can I assure myself that this is TMS? The interesting question is that my answer is actually not so much about giving you an answer. It's about finding out, what are you saying to yourself? Because there's some doubt that you have that needs to be articulated. It needs to be brought out from the depths. It's hiding in there. And it's hiding in a general place, which doubt often does. It's just kind of like, oh, well, I'm just not sure. But why are you not sure? So this is just an example, Mary. I'm not saying I know the answer, but you could say to yourself, well, what if there is some, lurking medical condition? That would be one kind of doubt. It could be that you're like, oh, I don't think it is a lurking medical thing, but there's like a hereditary thing in my family that I heard about once, and maybe it's that popping up. By the way, I don't want to give you doubts by saying any of these things. These are all just made up. And guess what? Here's the good news. All of your doubts are going to be complete crap. And I don't mean that towards you. I mean it towards everybody, including myself. All of our doubts end up being wrong. The job in the doubt column is to observe, articulate, and counter. Observe means to call it into question. So I want to call into question, which you're already doing. Is this just a doubt? The step you're on is articulating. We got to get it put into words specifically. So before I answer the question, how can I assure you that it's TMS? I want to ask you the question, why do you think it isn't? The reason, and I'm not evading the question, I'm helping you to bring it out so we can see, what are you really saying to yourself? Why do you think this isn't? I don't have the answer to that. And this is one of those things in group where if we were talking, you'd be able to tell me right away. I'd be able to have a response. We'd go back and forth a bunch of times and get much further than we can today. But what I want to do first, Mary, since we don't have much time today, is let's just get this put into words. Why do you think it isn't? Because if we answer that question and we eradicate it, you're not going to have that doubt anymore. And then you'll probably be on to the next doubt like anybody else's. But when we get enough of those doubts under control, you're going to start to be totally confident in this. We need a good answer to the doubts, and we can't do that without the questions being asked directly. So you've got some questions. I got to bring them out of you, if that makes sense. Mary, do let me know if that makes sense. We have just like a minute left today, but chime in and let me know if it makes sense, or send me an email, or let's talk about it. one thing I can guarantee you is I can help you get this doubt down. It doesn't look like we'll probably be able to do it fully today, but if we have enough of a conversation, doubt has nowhere to hide. Okay. Mary says, yes, it does. Thank you, Dan. You're welcome. Let's keep having this conversation. I want to have a conversation with all of you that just keeps going so that we can get all those doubts down. And the more certain I get all of you, then you go out into the community and you're a more certain person, which helps other people with their doubt. This is a whole conversation we all have to have together. So thanks, Mary. Thanks for joining us here and bringing that great question. Okay, Jane says, thanks, Dr. Dan. Very good to see you. Oh, we already said that one. Sorry. Okay, she says, thanks again, Dr. D. It is my pleasure, Jane. You're going to be much better soon. Okay. Rude Master 27 says, how's the book coming along? It's coming along great. I am on the last copy edit, which means I don't have to think about, do I need to add something? The book is written. Now it is simply proofreading. And that's going to take me a couple weeks to a month. I've got a cover designer going. We're working on the book layout. So I'm hoping it's going to be out to you in a couple months, hopefully even faster than that. But I'm working, and thank you for your interest in that. Guys, it has been a pleasure. I will look forward to seeing you same time next week. That's Thursdays, 6 p.m. Eastern, 3 p.m. Pacific. As always, you can go to my website, www.crushingdoubt.org, and you can look at all the different resources and things that I write about there. New podcast episodes are going to be coming out. I'm going to explain how that's all going to work. You can sign up for my newsletter on that website as well, which will keep you posted on everything, including my book. And we're just going to keep this conversation going. The more of us that understand these issues, the better, because it's going to help everybody. Mary says, looking forward to your next live session. Thanks, Dan. Good. Hope to see you there, Mary, and pleasure having you here. Thank you, everybody. It's such a great community. It's such nice. It's just such a nice feeling to be doing this work with you all, and to know that I'm helping people in the ways that I wished I could have gotten help. But thankfully, I found the help anyway, and I'm here helping you. We'll keep it up. Rita says, thanks, Dan. Good to see you, Rita. Thank you so much, everybody, and I will see you next week. Okay, take care till then.